Hi, my name is Erica Jones, and you're watching the Archetypal News Network. I'm a counseling astrologer and a practitioner of the mystical arts and metaphysical healing. You will find my work at realimaginal.com. And I'm excited to announce a live presentation on Pluto's upcoming entry into Aquarius. And I'll be speaking from the perspective of world events as well as on a more personal level on February 12th. See my classes and events page on my website, realimaginal.com, for more details and registration. And today, I will be discussing the upcoming full moon in Leo on February 5th. So the Leo full moon arrives in the heart of Aquarius season. It's exact on February 5th at 10:28 a.m. U.S. Pacific time. And it features an electrifying shock from the primordial trickster Uranus, whose stressful square aspect to this full moon suggests an element of surprise or liberation. So the planet Uranus is associated with the intellectual, idealistic, independent, unique, and simply sparkly sign of Aquarius, which amplifies the qualities of Uranus emanating through the Leo full moon. So as a result, we may find a quest for freedom and originality ignited or emboldened under these skies, as rebellious Uranus is finally breaking free from several years of conservative Saturn's restrictions. So if we've been working towards breaking free of constraints or just trying to move forward for a while already, any persistent limitations can feel extra irritating. It's like the full moon might really bring up a lot of emotions around this, as full moons do tend to amplify human emotions. And these limitations can be just echoes of the past or actual obstacles we're going to still have to climb over. But we want what we want, and we just may feel like we have waited long enough or worked hard enough already to get what we're after. And while Saturn's problematic influence does linger on in Aquarius until mid-March of this year, asking us to be thorough and meticulous and to take care of loose ends, this Leo full moon is likely to fill our hearts with passion and determination. And for many, the Leo full moon is going to be like a breath of fresh air. Our creativity may find a generative outlet, or we may find the courage to make the leap we've just been considering for a long time. And for many of us, it points towards a time of inventing and reinventing ourselves as destiny feels close at hand. This feeling and experience could provoke excitement, fear, irritation, overwhelm, or even upset. On the one hand, what happens when we finally get what we've craved for so long? When freedom is suddenly available and the villain that's been holding us back has disappeared. Many find it disorienting, truly, to suddenly have power available to them with no one else to blame or to take responsibility when things go sideways or when they go well. And on the other hand, the nature of Uranus to generate the sudden and unexpected could also present just a few different wrinkles for some of us. After all, the sun represents our egoic sense of self and our construction of identity, how we want to be seen, how we project ourselves. And it craves stability at the same time as it strives to express itself, as we strive to express who we are. But the funny thing is, our self-expression results in interaction with and feedback from our environment. That is part of our growth process, and sometimes that can feel destabilizing. So all at once, the sun is this figure that wishes to be a stable center, and yet by its very nature is dynamic and in motion, ever growing along a trajectory. So the stressful square aspect from Uranus to the sun, which is exact on February 3rd, but is really close to squaring both the sun and the moon at the full moon. The sun square Uranus is pointing to inconsistencies between how we imagine who we are, the face that we present to the world, versus who we truly are on a soul level. So where are we inconsistent in the presentation versus the truth of who we are on a soul level? And we may get to see some aspect of ourselves reflected to us by the Leo full moon's energy that we know is true, that we really want to claim, but which represents a significant change in how we radiate our light into the world. Some growing pains may remain, especially if we get bogged down in worry and second guesses and analysis paralysis, particularly when it comes to issues of remaining true to our souls against pressures from our environment. Now, also this week, we're looking at Venus squaring Mars and Venus making a scintillating sextile to Uranus. And Venus, our planet of love and beauty, will be making this stressful square aspect with the planet of passion and courage, Mars, exact on February 4th, right at this full moon. And due to the outgoing Mars retrograde period, the two lovers of Mars and Venus have had more interactions than usual, of hard aspect interactions than usual over the last 5 months. So the dynamism of the square between Venus and Mars happened on September 16th last year. Then they opposed each other on November 30th. And now we're looking at Venus squaring off again with Mars on February 4th. So this Mars retrograde has given us a check-in on how we are directing our finite life's energy, and these points of interaction with Venus in September, November, and now in February really bring into focus the ways we are in sync with others or bouncing around on the wrong wavelengths, or even with our own internal self-process and conflicting parts of our desire nature. So this final square in the sequence features Venus in a sign that she does enjoy, Pisces, and it suggests that we may be tempted to compromise our needs in order to preserve our connections. And if this is a conflict avoidance habit that's familiar to you, you might reconsider this tactic. All of us might reconsider this tactic and try to use the Piscean energy to instead guide a compassionate assertion of our needs and desires, to be present to others, but to not lose sight of what we need. But this could be a bit challenging, honestly, especially if we've been dancing around some conflicts and need to just have everything out in the open. So too much restraint in expressing our needs could lead to an explosion. So avoidance isn't looking good under these skies. But the fight, what is this fight about? You know, it could be over affection. It could be about money. It could be about the open expression of desires. You know, for those of us that have been quietly harboring a crush on someone, let's say, this week could be the moment of the big reveal. And adding some more pizzazz to the Venus-Mars dance between harmony as Venus and discord as Mars is Venus making a gentle sextile to Uranus. This is exact on February 7th, which brings in the love of the new. And this is just a great day to experiment with relating differently to any Venus-Mars conflicts that I've just described, to try different strategies and tactics of togetherness. Uranus signifies freedom, and this influence invites us to explore how togetherness can really be built on free choices and the individuality of each person in the relationship. And turning towards Mercury. So we have this week Mercury sextiling Neptune, Mercury conjoining Pluto, and Mercury finally entering the sign of Aquarius. So the cosmic messenger, Mercury, will make a smooth sextile to imaginative Neptune. That'll be exact on February 6th, and will help us all to imagine what we might do with newfound freedoms or unleashed passions. Mercury is traversing the very practical-minded sign of Capricorn at the time of the sextile, lending some structure towards what can be an otherwise kind of disorienting or vague experience. Mercury-Neptune, Neptune kind of dissolving Mercury's focus at times. So we may find our thoughts turning towards negotiating the path from our present circumstances to a more ideal scenario, and maybe especially receptive to the imagery of symbols and archetypes. It's a great influence for using divinatory systems such as tarot or numerology and such, or the I Ching, to chart a course, as our ability to recognize symbolic languages is enhanced. But look out, as Mercury is approaching their conjunction with the Lord of the Underworld, Pluto. That'll be exact a bit later on February 10th. Mercury Pluto's intense brooding mind has really been with us throughout this most recent Mercury retrograde cycle of late December to early February. But it's going to get a spike of energy this week with that conjunction. And Mercury Pluto is the detective. It can be the obsessive mind, the persuasive story. And it could be easy to get carried away by signs and omens and symbols, so fabricating a story out of whole cloth rather than discerning one that's already in progress. But with those warnings aside, we could be moved by very powerful words and thoughts this week as our perception opens to greater depths than usual. And Mercury is finally arriving in Aquarius on February 11th, and they're going to hang out there until March 2nd, following their fiery passage through Pluto's realms. And after spending an unusually long 2 months in Capricorn due to their retrograde. So this change of scenery for Mercury punctuates the feelings of forward momentum that many of us will be experiencing under the Leo full moon, and the freedom, the feeling of, the fresh air that finally gets to come in. And we might find it easier to cast our thoughts towards the future this month. The Aquarian energy is really riding high, bringing in more visionary and idealistic sensibilities that should last at least until the ego-centered sun meets up with the guy that reminds us what we have to do, what we really have to do, Saturn in Aquarius on February 16th. That's going to remind us of our responsibilities. That Sun-Saturn conjunction. It's like, oh yeah, I got to do that and this has to happen. Duties and tasks that, ironically, we have to fulfill them in order to be free, to embrace expanding horizons of opportunity. So Saturn's here to help, not to worry. It's just a matter of giving attention to that. And that little, for some of us, might be a bit of a speed bump or bring up those concerns. Fortunately, Mercury in Aquarius can make it easier to take an objective stance on what might otherwise be an emotionally charged circumstance. But grasping for this rationality can be misplaced at times when empathy and emotional sensitivity are called for. So intellectual ideals and principles have their place, absolutely. But if we would be wise, we must also give empathy and emotional intelligence their rightful place, particularly as we are moved to embrace freedom, which means recognizing that freedom's direct correlate is responsibility. So that's it for this Leo full moon of 2023. Thank you for tuning in to Archetypal News Network and for listening. I hope you find this information useful. Again, my name is Erica Jones. I'm a counseling astrologer and a practitioner of the mystical arts and metaphysical healing. You'll find my work at realimaginal.com. I'm going to have several webinars this year, as I mentioned at the top of this forecast, including one on February 12th on Pluto's entry into Aquarius for the first time in 245 years. It's a big deal. And I will definitely be bringing the archetypal astrological perspective in, looking at planetary combinations and cycles within that period of time. There's a lot of interesting developments. So please check out my website, realimaginal.com, for more information and registration to attend the webinar on Pluto and some others I've got coming up. With best wishes for your well-being in all the ways.